to my channel. So for those of you that don't know, this is Fig and he's a firm favourite both on my Instagram and here on my channel, and your tail just hit me in the face. I made a couple of videos about him when I first got him, but I thought it'd be nice to make a video all about him and talk about him a bit more on my channel. So the first thing I want to talk about with him is the fact that he is living alone, because I know this is going to come up a lot in my comment section because it always does. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with keeping mice, or perhaps you're more familiar with keeping rats, most of the time male mice do need to be housed alone. Naturally in the wild, male mice will have their own territories and they'll defend these territories against any other males that come into them by fighting with them, and ultimately they do end up killing each other. Now this behaviour will transfer to most domestic mice you find, however some people do have success with housing two males together. This is something that's made more likely by the males being siblings or really closely related, or by being selectively bred to be less aggressive towards each other, but most of the time you will find that male mice do not get along with each other, and this is the case for Fig. I'm friends with a lot of mouse breeders, and although they do have some success with keeping their own males together, they don't house their males out in pairs because they are aware that things can and do go wrong. So for Fig, I thought I'd talk a little bit about how I came to have him. So I started looking for a male mouse in the summer of last year, and I did contact a breeder that had some really cute mice available and one that I thought I really wanted, but unfortunately she told me that it had already been sold and that I couldn't have him. So instead I did start looking at some rescues, but unfortunately most of them were too far away or didn't actually have any mice available. So I joined a Facebook page where people were advertising mice that they had, and a lady was advertising just some plain brown mice, so I asked her to send me photos of males she had available. Now this was about a month later because I kind of given up my search, and she sent me some photos, and it turned out the mouse that I'd been originally interested in actually turned out to be Fig, so I agreed to have him. So at the time when I did agree to have him, I was actually on holiday, and I said I'd have him in about 2 weeks time just to give me a bit more time to prepare. Obviously I'd done my research but I didn't have everything that I needed at the time, but she said it would be better if I had him as soon as possible. Now this is because he was actually being housed with his brothers at the time, and even though they were about 7 to 8 weeks old, they were already starting to fight and seriously injure each other. Now the vibe that I got from her is that she tried to be a breeder and she got a bit overwhelmed with it. I think it is a bit more difficult for people to breed mice, just because when they do get to a certain age you do have to separate the males, and she didn't have enough cages to do that. So from the photos I kind of gathered that she was kind of a bit overwhelmed with it. From the photos she had like tiny cages, so cages about this big, stacked up in her bathroom on top of each other, and each cage had about a couple of male mice in it, just because she didn't have enough cages to separate them and it had got a bit out of hand. So she brought him to me and he was actually free given the circumstances and the fact that she did need to get rid of him as soon as possible, otherwise he could have ended up dead. So I wouldn't say I was completely prepared to have him, although I was grateful to get him out of that situation. The only cage I had at the time was my rat's travel cage, which isn't an appropriate size cage for any animal really, but it was the cage he was being housed in. So it's a cage about this big, but bear in mind he was being housed in that previously with his brothers, so he still had a lot more space to himself, and then the cage that he's in now did get delivered a couple of days to a week later. So when I got him, he was small, he was scared, he would sit in the corner and rattle his tail at me, which is a defense mechanism, and he was terrified of me. Now he had a few injuries on his tail, a few bite marks where the other males had bit him, and then of course the iconic chunk missing out of his ear was caused by his brothers fighting with him. But to be honest, he did get off really lucky in the fact that he wasn't seriously injured, because there was a lot of tension between his brothers in the cage. He's quite lucky that he didn't get more serious injuries. He'd also never really been handled. As you can see now, he's fine with being held. He does run around, but that's just a typical mouse thing. The breeder had only ever really picked him up for photos, she hadn't really socialised him at all, and she did pick him up by his tail, which did kind of upset me because it does make it harder to tame them if you're not picking him up in a way that's respectful to them. So it did take a bit of patience to get him to where he is now, but I'm really happy with him, and that's his backstory. I want to tell you about what he's like now, a year on. So to help with this section, I'm going to be using some of the questions on the YouTube pet tag just to help me answer some things about him that I might not have thought of otherwise. So the first question is, what kind of pet is he and what breed is he? Now he is a fancy mouse, and I'm not too clued up on mouse varieties, but I think he's something like a chocolate broken marked mouse. The second question is, how old is your pet? And he is actually 1 year old. He turned 1 on the 1st of May. Next question is, what are some quirky things about your pet's personality? And the first thing that I wrote down is that he gets really jealous of the rats. If I'm giving the rats attention and I'm on the other side of the room talking to them, he gets really jealous and he'll stand on this wooden ledge in his cage and actually make grabby hands at me out of the cage until I come over and give him attention, so he is a bit of an attention seeker. Another thing is that he is very good at flinging his poo out of his cage. He throws it out of the cage bars, and I find it in really weird places. If there's also particularly large chunks of bedding in the cage that he doesn't like, he'll also post them through the bars, which really makes me laugh because He'll be holding a piece of bedding that's about 3 times his size and pushing it through the bars, which gets all over my floor, but I find that really funny. He also likes to play a game where when you do give him attention, he'll run up to you on this little wooden ladder he has in his cage, and then when you lean in to talk to him, he'll run away, and then he'll come running and dashing back up to you, which I think is really cute. The next question is what is his favourite food, and right now he's eating a piece of popcorn. It's like a pet flavoured, pet safe popcorn, and I'd say that's his favourite thing to eat, obviously in moderation because we don't want him getting too fat. The next question is what is your favourite pastime with him, and although I'm not too sure if he enjoys it, I really do enjoy taking photos of him. He's such a natural and he seems to really understand when I put him somewhere what I want him to do, and he just takes really good photos, and I think his personality really shines through in the photos, so I really do enjoy taking pictures of him. And lastly, the last question is what nicknames do you have for him? He has 3 nicknames that I really use: Figgy, Figlet and Figaro. So that's it for today's video, guys. I really hope you liked learning a little bit more about Fig. I always get asked to feature more mouse videos on my channel. As he is the only mouse I've ever owned, I really don't have too much experience with mice. All my experience comes from him, so I'm kind of wary of sharing too much about mice on my channel, but of course I will make more videos about Fig. Make sure you subscribe to see more animal related videos from us, and we'll see you in our next video. Bye!